How's that? Can you pick me up on your system? Now, I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. I was going to start, of course, by welcoming you all to this event organised by the university's Global Ideas Society. I've been asked to say a few words. Basically, I just want to say welcome. I don't need to introduce the speakers because that's been done. I don't need to introduce the topic because that's been done. However, there are one or two things I'd like to say, and one is that we've got an external speaker, so he's a guest of this university. We've also got some, I believe, guests in the audience from outside this university, so I want you all to feel very welcome. You are our guests, we are your hosts. I hope we'll do our best to make you feel welcome, and I hope we'll have a very nice, interesting, challenging discussion about the economic issues of the day. Now, you saw that video just now about this crisis and that crisis, and I wonder if this really is a problem, because we've seen things like this every few years for as long as I can remember coming up on our news programs. And I wonder if it's just something cyclical that happens in the economies, or if there really is a major problem. So before we get into the main debate, I'm going to ask each of the two speakers to tell us just in a couple of minutes whether they think there is a problem or not. And perhaps, Mr. Harwood, would you like to start with that? Oh, you can have this now.
Here we are, 2012. We're 4 years after the crisis, and again, the film there was really focusing on this crisis which kicked off in 2008. By all means, we should be in an uptick. We should be in the growth cycle, which means that the worst of the recession should be beyond us. We should be seeing growth of 3 or 4%. What we are seeing is we're seeing growing unemployment. We're seeing anemic growth at best, which is basically bouncing along at the bottom. And we're seeing a massive increase in money supply. Governments are finding it difficult to boost their economies, and as a result, we are running very large deficits in the West. As a result of that, we're seeing an increase in money printing. Quantitative easing, we have 275 billion, which the UK government has entered into in the last 18 months or so. And the question comes is it over? Because really at this point, we should be seeing a lot of growth. The answer, I would say, is that we're not seeing it, and that I would say that we're on a precipice of a further recession, if not depression. It is pretty unprecedented that we are 4 years on in such a bad position, and as a result of that, I would question to say that what type of recovery are we facing? And I think it's time to start looking at some alternatives. It's time to put aside some of these tired, stereotypical arguments, Keynesian views, and so on and so forth. I don't believe the politicians. I don't believe what they're telling us. I don't believe some of the statistics that they're giving us. And I don't believe a lot of what the mainstream media is pushing. So in my presentation tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, exposing some of this hypocrisy and lies, and I'm going to present some Islamic solutions as a means to say there are other ways, there are other alternatives that we can look to solving this type of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harwood. Dr. Sholarin, is there a problem?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Before I start, I want to make it clear that what I'm going to say here today represents my own view, and it does not necessarily represent the view of Westminster University or my department or my School of Business. This is strictly my own opinion. The present capitalist system, as we know it, is flawed. However, we cannot throw it away, because there's no better alternative on the table as yet. We have to appreciate the benefits, enormous amount of benefit that we have seen over the past 50, 100 years that we've been doing this capitalism system. It has brought us enormous amount of wealth. It has helped to solve huge amount of problems, financial problems. And without hesitation, I can also agree that it has created huge amount of problems for us as well. So while I will subscribe to the fact that the system of capitalism is flawed, I would also like us to appreciate some of the benefits that it contains. Nonetheless, I'm going to articulate this benefit and also discuss with you some of the flaws. But if you can appreciate or look at the fact that we have regulations in place, we have measures being put, into motion in order to address and correct these imbalances. We cannot do without them. As Dr. Jafar said, these are effect of cyclical nature of our economy, or world economy where we are living at the moment. So in a nutshell, I would like to maintain a position that capitalism is flawed. There's no doubt about that. However, it is still the best option that we have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sholarin. Now, I'm going to call on each of the speakers to talk to us for about 10 minutes, expanding further on their position. Have you decided who's going to go first? Ola? Okay, well, why don't you go first, Mr. Harwood, and then that will give Ola the chance to respond to anything you might say.